him about surfing in Nicaragua.
Right.
I used to go on surf trips in Nicaragua, and that was the stuff that he dug.
Right.
He would listen
Sure.
to me like he loved that kind of stuff, but he wouldn't want to talk about just daily crap.
Right.
And another time, I was going to tell him about a song that he wanted to do. He wanted to do these. This was on an acoustic on that radio show.
Right.
And he wanted to play this one song that was in the key of B, and then right at the end to go into this other song that was in the key of F. And I noticed when I was messing around with it on my guitar, I noticed that it had that tritone flat 5 kind of. It was wasn't a very smooth transition to go from this key to that key, right? It just didn't sound that good.
Right.
And I went up to Dave and I kind of started saying, "Hey, Dave," and he looks at me and he goes, "Brian, you got the look on your face like someone who's going to tell me something I don't want to hear."
Oh, shit. Oh,
like,
boy.
he just read my mind.
Oh, God.
So I just turned around and walked away. I'm like, okay, I guess he just could tell I was going to say something. I don't want to hear that. There's funny things, like I won't say he could read your mind, but can read your facial expressions really well.
Now, so you did those two songs and they switched from keys. Did he say anything after doing those two songs?
We ended up, that never ended up happening anyway, so it didn't matter. We learned a lot of songs and then we didn't play them all. So it didn't turn out that thing never happened.
Did you ever record any of those songs? And what were the songs that you played?
Well, I don't know that you can probably still dig up a few of these things. It's very hard to find, but they're called Radio Rodeo. Is what we did. It was 10 radio shows, and a few of them have been on the internet. I've heard. We played a bunch of stuff on acoustic. It was all like old doo-wop stuff and blues. Yeah, and just 50s and 60s stuff. I can't even remember all the songs we did because we probably learned about 20, and then he'd go, he would just yell out something and we just play it.
Wow.
We was ready. We had whatever song he yelled, we started going. In fact, when we did the Howard Stern show, you could find that on YouTube.
Right.
The bummer is you see us all sitting there with our guitars, and they only show the talking. They don't show the part of us playing.
Oh, God, yeah. That's too bad.
Yeah, so it's out there. I know a few people have probably recorded it and put it out here and there, but I've never been able to find him. I'd love to see him.
Oh,
or
yeah.
just hear the radio stuff.
Absolutely.
I think I might have one of them.
That's great. Now, also, in terms of the Sam and Dave tour, when you heard that Dave was going to go on tour with Sam, did it blow your mind?
I can remember I was driving in my car on the Interstate 10 in L.A., and Matt Sensio called me up and he says, "I hope you're sitting down." I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because we're going on tour with Sammy Hagar." I remember him saying that, but I don't remember what I felt. I was stoked that we're going on tour. I don't know what I thought about the fact that it was Hagar. I'm not sure if I cared or not, because I just was excited to do a big tour with David Lee Roth.
Sure.
So the fact that it was with Sammy, I didn't know what that was going to mean at first. It was definitely one of those like, well, how's this going to go? What the heck? And so, we didn't know exactly what it was going to be like at first. It was a few weeks, before it was announced. It was fun. Sammy was really cool to us. The first day of the tour, somebody came and said, "Hey," to me and James and Ray, said, "Sammy wants to meet you guys." And we all went into his dressing room and he said, he shook all our hands. "Hey, nice to meet you guys. We're looking forward to a great tour." He was just super nice to us and said, anytime you want to come by, man, come visit us. A couple times I went to their dressing room and had dinner with them,
wow.
With Michael Anthony and stuff.
Cool.
So in fact, here's a weird story. Now, when this tour was happening, Michael Anthony came out on a bunch of the shows.
Sure.
Would jump in with Sammy about halfway through the show.
Right.
And he was super cool. We had a couple of real fun nights of me, Michael, and Sammy drinking Cabo Wabo all night at the bar place. At a couple times when we stayed at the same hotel. And Michael Anthony had not talked to Dave in like 10 or 15 years.
Right.
And this is the weirdest thing ever. I'm sitting there in Sammy Hagar's dressing room, hanging out with Michael Anthony. I don't know if it was after the show or before or what it was. And Michael comes up to me and says, "Hey, Brian," he goes, do you think you could see if Dave will talk to me? And I'm like, yeah, let me go check. And I was like, wow,
oh my God.
Michael Anthony's asking me if he can talk to Dave. And I went over to Dave, down the hallway to Dave's room, and I said, "Hey, Michael Anthony wants to see if it's okay if he talks to you or something." And then Dave said, "Sure." Next thing you know, they got together and they hung out by themselves for a while. And I don't know what happened, but it was like the first time they had talked in like years and years.
Wow.
It was just a trip. It was the weirdest feeling to have Michael Anthony, the guy that's been in Van Halen all these years, ask me if he could talk to Dave.
That is
bizarre.
Such a weird...
Wow. Did the subject ever come up of Mike playing with Dave and the rest of the band?
I don't remember that either. I would have loved it. I think Dave should have done it. There was even talk, like right in the beginning of the tour. We started off in Cleveland, and then we played in Detroit. And in Detroit, Kid Rock was there. And after the show, somehow me, Dave, and Kid Rock ended up in a room together just drinking whiskey. And the three of us are just kicking back, hanging out. And Kid Rock says to Dave, man, you and Sammy should like do an encore together.
Totally.
You know? And then and Dave's like, Dave's drinking, having a good time. Kid Rock's like a young, guy. So I think that there's a thing where Dave likes with the newer people. Remember this is 2002.
Yeah.
So it was a long time ago. It's like sometimes he'll listen to the younger generation.
Sure.
And so he started talking about it. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Now let's do a jam with Sammy. We drank a lot though. And then the next day when the show came, Dave comes walking in just fucking totally hungover, and he says, there will be no jam tonight. And then, and then there was never, and then because we had done 3 nights in a row, Sam and Dave both talked to the booking agent and said no more 3 in a row. So they rescheduled some shows to make it so they'd only do 2 shows and have a night off.
Right.
2 shows and have a night off.
Right.
Not 3 in a row.
Right.
So we never ended up jamming. It never happened, but it seemed like it was close for a minute.
It's funny because everybody really thought that they were going to come out and do like at least one song together. And Sammy had gone on press and said that he went knocking on Dave's door at one point and he wouldn't answer the door. Yeah. Do you remember that?
I was in the room.
You were in the room?
Exactly. Sammy we'd be eating our dinner after a show, and there's a bang, 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 bang on the door. Dave would go, who's out there? And Matt would go, oh, it's Sammy Hagar. He goes, don't let him in. And then bang, 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 bang. And then when we'd open the door, he'd be gone. There'd be a bottle of tequila, a Cabo Wabo sitting there for us. I mean, Sammy tried, but even Dave said one time, because even when Howard Stern said, why couldn't you guys get along? Why couldn't you do something? And Dave he described it the way that makes the most sense. He goes, 2 big dogs, 1 big dog bowl. There's only 1 bowl and both of us dogs want it. So, and another time he said something about this room doesn't have enough. Isn't big enough for 2 egos, 2 big egos. So he kind of admitted that it was him because of his ego was too big to allow for another person.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that it was Dave that stopped it from happening, not Sammy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did Dave set the tone at the beginning of the tour? Like, look, guys, we're going to blow Sammy off the stage every night or anything like that? Did any of those conversations happen?
Pretty much, yeah. Our thing was, the difference of the shows was Sammy had a thing where he had like these bleachers set up on each side of the stage with about 20 fans on each side of the stage that were almost kind of like part of the stage. They were on the stage facing the audience, like little bleachers. And then he had all this, everything was orange and yellow and bright, like confetti, this whole vibe of like a big, and our thing was a wall of amps, everything's black, and we're out there to fucking rock it and just go bam, 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 without hardly any talking between the songs. It was just like pummel them with kick-ass tunes. And Sammy's was like, hey, let's get drunk and party, woohoo!
Right, right. Yeah.
His vibe was that, and Dave's was like, we're a machine, we're going to roll over the world. It was 2 different approaches,
Totally. And his set list was all Van Halen heavy. I mean, did he basically say he didn't want to do much solo material?
I don't know exactly how that came about. I can't remember how the set list came about, but I was very happy with it. The only thing we did from his solo stuff on the first tour was Just Like Paradise.
Right.
Everything else was like, man, we were doing Dead or Alive, Atomic Punk.
Right.
We were just doing all this heavy stuff. It was so killer.
Yeah, it was some of the best. It was some of the best selections he's brought out in many, many years because he dug deep and really did some of those incredible album cuts that the Van Halen fans really wanted. And let's be honest, Van Halen fans were hungry for Van Halen. Van Halen had been off the road for years at that point. And a lot of the time, what we had heard as fans was that Dave and Sam had approached the Van Halen brothers about doing a dual tour, and that they were not having it. So they decided to do this tour instead, and in spite of that.
It's possible. I never heard that, but there's definitely stuff that went on business things that I don't know about.
Oh, of course.
I don't know if you are familiar with a lot of the old Van Halen bootlegs from before they got, but they used to open with On Fire.
Yep.
I almost talked Dave into opening with On Fire.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, it was like on the second, and then it was like we rehearsed it as a band, but Dave never sang it with us. He was never at the rehearsals, and it never happened. But I thought, Dave, it would be so killer if we just came out with On Fire, man. People would just go nuts.
And what was his reaction to your suggestion?
He actually liked the idea, but somehow it just never happened.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
And
with Dave, you kind of like, you don't sit there and try to saying it over and over. Like I noticed that Dave will, like, if you say something, then he says, "Oh yeah, cool," and then if he never brings it up again, that kind of means he didn't really think it was that cool.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't. He remembers stuff. Like it's kind of like that's why I think I got along pretty well with him, because I understood how he was and I didn't bug him.
Right.
You know, I never asked him about old Van Halen questions.
Really?
I mean, hardly ever. I mean, maybe a couple times in the whole 5 years I played with him, I rarely would say, "Hey man, like what about that?" You know, I figured he don't want to talk about shit from 30 years ago. That's just an old band he was into. Him. I had a way of not bugging him that I think made it so where he could handle, like for example, when he went to New York to do the radio show, I'm the only guy he called to go and be on the radio with him.
Right. Be Young,
You know?
He used to call you on the radio, remember?
Yeah, so and I think it was because I just understood how to be around him and to not, like I said, most of the stuff, and I would see it, because I would see what other people, and I'd see how he'd get annoyed by all these different things.
Right.
So I knew what annoyed him, and I just didn't do that stuff.
Brian, do you think that he had such a Van Halen heavy set list as opposed to stuff from his soul work because he was trying to prove to the brothers that he could still sing this stuff and perhaps get back into the band?
I don't know. Honestly, that's, like I said, that's one of those things where I never asked, so I could never guess. It's possible. But then again, as the years went on that I played with him, every year we dropped a few of the Van Halen songs and added more of his solo stuff. So by the end, we were doing Just a Gigolo, Going Crazy, Just Like Paradise. You know, we were doing California Girls. I mean, the set was kind of getting lighter and lighter.
Right.
And it was getting, we'd lose DOA and put California Girls.
Right,
You know,
right.
we'd lose I'm the One and get Just a Gigolo. And
Right.
so it was fun, but I was kind of a little bummed out. But it was cool because I got to do all those songs with him. And some of the times, when we did Just a Gigolo, we do this really funny little thing where I would play the opening chords. Like I just play one of the chords, and then he'd go, "Oh, just a gigolo," and then he'd stop. He'd try to fake that he was going to sing and get me to play the chord, and then like, "Oh, gotcha," you know, like I didn't say Simon Says. So there'd be some fun goof around that we had. Like, there's a few times on stage where we were actually joking with each other, and it was like really fun, and we were like, we'd really laugh, and I'd go, "Man, this is like I'm actually having a real moment with Dave," because that doesn't happen too often, you know.
Right, absolutely.
Where he laughs, you know.
In terms, could you suggest songs to Dave, old Van Halen songs, or was it all of him choosing everything?
Honestly, I can't remember. I definitely remember suggesting On Fire, but I don't know how the set list came into being. I mean, when I joined the band, I remember that I learned the set list that they were already playing. So That's how it started. I mean, so I went in there they just basically said, "Here's the songs to play." And that was pretty much that first tour. Those were the songs.
Right.
So they were already playing those songs with Bart, you know, before I joined. So I don't even really know who suggested the set list and how it worked. But like I said, I just liked it. It was a good set list. I mean, opening with Hopper Teacher, you know, just come right out swinging, you know.
Absolutely. And what was the hardest one to learn?
Well, I already knew them all when I joined. So the hardest ones I learned were in the Atomic Punks, because we played stuff in the Punks that Dave didn't play. We were playing Loss of Control.
Oh, wow.
With the Punks. I mean, we were playing Hang 'em High, which I never did with Dave. Yeah,
nice.
So the punk stuff, we were doing the hardest, you know, songs with the Atomic Punks. So it was actually easier to play with Dave, because about the 4 or 5 of the most difficult songs we didn't do. You know, we weren't doing, like I would say, Hang 'em High, that riff in the beginning, that's a pretty rough riff to do. And then also I used to do in the Punks, I used to do a guitar solo that was Eruption, Spanish Fly, the intro to Mean Streets, and the intro to Little Guitars all in a row.
Wow.
Like he was
nice.
So it was like a 5 minutes of all his solos put together.
Wow.
And so with Dave, I just did this little 30-second intro it really got me. So, you know, so it's actually a little bit less demanding than the Punks, you know.
And in terms of capturing Eddie's tone, how did you go about doing that?
Well, I'll be honest with you again, with Atomic Punks, I did it way better than with Dave, because I was allowed to use my setup that I used with the Punks, which was basically a 5150 into a 2 Marshall 412 cabinets I used a reverb unit that had basically a kind of an Van Halen 1 reverb dialed in.
Right.
And when I joined Dave, I had to play through all this gear, and it was like there's 12 Marshall cabinets, but I was using the bottom 6, and they were all going through all these Marshalls were going into these power amps. So every amp every cabinet was powered up with like 100 watts per cabinet. So I had like 600 watts. And I think that my tone really got lost in all that horsepower.
Sure.
It was all about